At 2:32 p.m. on the 27th of April 2011, a tornado touched down in a rural field approximately 2 miles north of the Georgia-Tennessee state line. The National Weather Service office in Peachtree City, Georgia had issued a tornado warning for Catoosa County at 2:19 p.m., based on radar signatures indicating a strong mesocyclone embedded in a supercell thunderstorm moving east-northeast at nearly 50 miles per hour. The warning was broadcast on NOAA weather radios, local television stations, and through the emergency alert system. But the tornado that formed at 2:32 p.m. was not a typical spring storm. Within minutes, it would grow into one of the most destructive tornadoes to ever strike northwest Georgia. The storm that produced the Ringgold tornado was part of a larger outbreak that would eventually spawn over 300 tornadoes across the southeastern United States over the course of 3 days. But on that Wednesday afternoon, the focus was on a single violent supercell that had already produced a deadly tornado in northeastern Alabama just a few hours earlier. That cell crossed the Georgia line and continued intensifying. At 2:33 p.m., the tornado's circulation tightened. Radar showed a debris signature at the surface. The tornado was now rain-wrapped and moving fast. At 2:36 p.m., the tornado crossed Interstate 75 just south of the Tennessee border. Vehicles on the highway encountered sudden zero visibility, hail, and violent winds. Several drivers pulled over. Others kept moving, unaware that a wedge tornado was bearing down on them from the southwest. At 2:37 p.m., the tornado entered the corporate limits of Ringgold, a small city of about 3,000 residents. The National Weather Service later estimated wind speeds in the core of the tornado at 175 miles per hour, making it a high-end EF4 on the enhanced Fujita scale. At 2:38 p.m., the tornado struck the downtown area of Ringgold. The Catoosa County courthouse, a historic brick building, lost its entire roof and the upper floor collapsed. The city hall was heavily damaged. Several businesses on the main street were flattened or reduced to rubble. A gas station was obliterated. The town's only grocery store, a Piggly Wiggly, was destroyed. Inside, employees and customers had taken shelter in the walk-in cooler. They survived, but the building was gone around them. Firefighters from the Ringgold Fire Department, who had taken refuge in the station's basement, emerged to find the station itself heavily damaged and the town unrecognizable. At 2:39 p.m., the tornado passed through the southern residential neighborhoods of Ringgold. Dozens of homes were leveled. Some were swept clean from their foundations. Trees were debarked and stripped of branches. Cars were thrown hundreds of feet. The tornado then crossed Highway 151 and continued east toward the community of Graysville. At 2:41 p.m., the tornado reached its maximum width of nearly half a mile. The damage path became continuous and nearly complete. Every structure in its path was either destroyed or heavily compromised. At 2:43 p.m., the tornado began to weaken as it climbed into the less populated hills east of Ringgold. The circulation became less organized. The debris signature on radar faded. By 2:47 p.m., the tornado had dissipated over a rural area near the Whitfield County line. The entire event from touchdown to dissipation lasted approximately 15 minutes. The damage path was slightly over 11 miles long. But in those 15 minutes, the tornado had killed 8 people, injured dozens more, and caused an estimated $40 million in property damage. What happened? The Ringgold tornado was one of over 300 tornadoes that spun across the United States during the April 25, 2011 super outbreak, the largest and most prolific tornado outbreak in recorded history. The meteorological setup was textbook and extreme. A powerful low-pressure system moved across the central United States, drawing warm, moist air from the Gulf of Mexico northward into the Mississippi and Tennessee valleys. At the same time, a strong jet stream aloft provided wind shear and lift. The combination created a high-risk environment for supercell thunderstorms. The Storm Prediction Center had issued a moderate risk for severe weather across the region early that morning and later upgraded portions to a high risk. The conditions were well understood by meteorologists. The challenge was not predicting the storm, but communicating the specific danger to the public in the minutes before a tornado strike. The tornado that hit Ringgold was what meteorologists call a rain-wrapped tornado. It was embedded within the heavy precipitation core of the supercell. This meant that visual detection was nearly impossible until the tornado was almost on top of an observer. In open farmland, that might mean a few extra seconds of warning. In a town like Ringgold, nestled in the rolling hills of the Appalachian foothills, it meant that many people never saw the tornado coming. They heard the roar or felt the pressure change or received a warning on a phone, but they did not have the luxury of watching it approach from a safe distance. National Weather Service meteorologists later reviewed radar data and storm spotter reports. The tornado warning for Catoosa County had been issued 13 minutes before the tornado touched down. That was within the typical lead time for warned tornadoes in the early 21st century, but the warning was not received equally by everyone. Some residents had NOAA weather radios that sounded an alarm. Others relied on television broadcasts, which were covering the outbreak live but could not always devote continuous coverage to a single cell in a region where multiple tornadoes were occurring simultaneously. Some residents received alerts on their cell phones through the nascent wireless emergency alert system, but that system was still new and not all phones were capable of receiving the messages. In the aftermath, the question that investigators asked was not whether the warning was issued, but whether it was enough. The tornado struck a community that was not accustomed to violent tornadoes. Historically, the Appalachian foothills have experienced tornadoes, but they are less frequent than in the Great Plains. The topography itself creates challenges. Hills block sightlines, making spotter verification difficult. The same hills also create a false sense of security. Some residents interviewed after the storm said they did not believe a tornado could hit Ringgold because it was too mountainous. That belief was false, but it was based on a local understanding of weather that had not been corrected by public education campaigns. The first responders who arrived in Ringgold after the tornado did not have an easy task. Emergency management officials had anticipated severe weather and had mobilized resources in advance. But the tornado had taken out power lines, cell towers, and roads. The downtown area was impassable for the first hour after the storm. Debris blocked every major route into the city. Firefighters and police officers had to walk into the hardest-hit areas, sometimes climbing over piles of wreckage. The first priority was triage and rescue. Volunteers from the community joined the effort, forming human chains to lift debris and search for survivors. By nightfall, 8 people were confirmed dead. The list of injured ran into the dozens. Many of the injuries were serious, including fractures, head trauma, and crush injuries from collapsed structures. Who was involved? The victims were residents of Ringgold and surrounding areas. They included an elderly couple in a mobile home that was swept away. They included a mother and her young child who took shelter in a bathroom, but were killed when the roof collapsed. They included a man who tried to outrun the tornado in his pickup truck and was thrown from the vehicle. The stories were individual, but the pattern was familiar to anyone who has studied tornado disasters. The dead were in mobile homes, in vehicles, or in structures that were not built to withstand winds over 150 miles per hour. No community is ever fully prepared for an EF4 tornado, but Ringgold had fewer safe rooms and storm shelters than towns in Tornado Alley. The city's emergency management plan had been designed for more typical severe weather events, not a direct hit from a violent tornado. What investigators found in the weeks that followed was a catalog of failures and successes. The failures were not in the meteorology. The Storm Prediction Center had correctly identified the risk. The National Weather Service Office had issued timely warnings. The problem was in the human layer. Many residents reported that they did not hear the warning, or that they heard it but did not act. Some said they were waiting for confirmation from a neighbor or a spotter before moving to shelter. Others said they did not believe the storm could be that dangerous because they had lived in Georgia their whole lives and never seen a tornado like that before. The disconnect between the forecast and the public response was not unique to Ringgold. It has been documented after every major tornado outbreak in the United States. People do not respond to warnings in the way meteorologists expect. They seek confirmation, they look for visual cues, they compare the warning to their own experience. In Ringgold, that delay cost lives. The success was in the response. Despite the widespread destruction, search and rescue teams reached survivors quickly. Hospitals in Chattanooga, Tennessee, just 15 miles north of Ringgold, had been placed on standby and received the most critical patients within an hour of the tornado. The American Red Cross set up shelters. The National Guard arrived within 24 hours to assist with security and debris removal. The community itself mobilized with remarkable speed. Neighbors helped neighbors dig out. Churches opened their doors. Donations poured in from across the state. Why does the Ringgold tornado still matter more than a decade later? It matters because it represents an ongoing challenge in tornado safety. The United States has the most advanced tornado forecasting system in the world. The National Weather Service issues warnings with lead times that would have seemed impossible 50 years ago. But those warnings do not always translate into life-saving action. The Ringgold tornado was a case study in how to improve that translation. After 2011, the National Weather Service implemented new impact-based warning formats that included more specific language about the expected damage. Local emergency management agencies in Georgia invested in more storm shelters and community education programs. The wireless emergency alert system became more widespread and more effective, but the underlying problem remains. In a rain-wrapped tornado moving at 50 miles per hour through hilly terrain, a 13-minute warning can feel like no warning at all. The Ringgold tornado also matters because it was part of a larger catastrophe. The April 25, 2011 super outbreak killed 324 people across 6 states. It was the deadliest tornado outbreak in the United States since the 1974 super outbreak. The experience of those 4 days reshaped the way the nation thinks about tornadoes. It prompted research into why people did not respond to warnings and what could be done to increase the rate of response. It led to changes in building codes in some states. It pushed meteorologists to experiment with new communication tools like social media and streaming video. The specific lessons from Ringgold were folded into a broader national conversation about vulnerability, preparedness, and the limits of technology. In the end, the Ringgold tornado was a violent, fast, and unpredictable event. The meteorologists who predicted it did their job. The emergency managers who responded did their job. The citizens who survived did so sometimes by luck, sometimes by preparation, and sometimes by a decision made in the last seconds before the storm hit. The 8 who died were not caught entirely by surprise. The warning had been issued, the sirens had sounded, but between the warning and the shelter there was a gap of time, of distance, and of human judgment that no forecast could close. The investigation that followed did not assign blame, but it did catalog every moment, every call, every decision in the hope that the next time a tornado raced toward a small town in the hills, that gap would be a little smaller. At 12:10 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on April 27, 2011, the National Weather Service Office in Peachtree City, Georgia, issued a tornado warning for Catoosa County. The warning was based on radar indications of a mesocyclone with strong rotation. The storm had already produced a tornado in neighboring Walker County, and the rotation signature was tightening. At 12:15 p.m., a spotter reported a tornado on the ground near the community of Ringgold. The warning was updated. The estimated wind speeds were over 130 miles per hour. The tornado was moving northeast at 50 miles per hour. What happened in the next 7 minutes was a disaster that would define the limits of tornado warning technology. The tornado entered Ringgold from the southwest. It struck the downtown area at 12:22 p.m. The damage survey later classified it as an EF4 with winds estimated at 170 miles per hour. The path was 12 miles long and up to 3/4 of a mile wide. In Ringgold, the damage was concentrated along a corridor that included residential neighborhoods, a mobile home park, and the historic commercial district. 8 people died, dozens were injured, over 100 structures were damaged or destroyed. Who was involved? The victims included a 69-year-old man who lived in a mobile home. He had no basement and no storm shelter. When the warning came, he tried to ride out the storm in his hallway. The mobile home was rolled and destroyed. He was found several hundred feet away. A mother and her 3-year-old daughter were in a frame house built in the 1950s. The house had no reinforced interior room. They took shelter in the bathroom. The tornado lifted the roof and collapsed the walls. The mother was killed instantly. The child died later at the hospital. A couple in their 70s had a safe room in their basement. They survived. But their neighbors, a family of 4, did not have a safe room. The father held his children in a closet. The closet was filled with debris. 2 of the children survived. The father and 1 child did not. What investigators found was a pattern of structural failure that had been documented in tornadoes for decades. Mobile homes were the most dangerous place to be. They offer little resistance to high winds, but the frame houses in Ringgold were also vulnerable. Many had crawl spaces, not basements. The roofs were attached with toe nails, not hurricane clips. The walls were not tied to the foundation with anchor bolts. These construction details mattered because the tornado's wind speeds exceeded the design standards for residential buildings in the region. The building codes in Catoosa County at the time did not require tornado-resistant construction. The state of Georgia had adopted the International Residential Code, but the enforcement was inconsistent. The result was that many homes in the tornado's path were simply not built to withstand winds over 100 miles per hour. How could this have happened? The question was not about the weather forecast. The Storm Prediction Center had issued a moderate risk for severe weather 2 days before. On the morning of April 27th, the risk was upgraded to high. The National Weather Service Office had issued a severe thunderstorm watch at 10:30 a.m. The tornado warning came at 12:10 p.m. The lead time for the warning was 12 minutes. That was above the national average. But the warning did not reach everyone in time. The emergency alert system activated sirens in Ringgold. The sirens sounded at 12:12 p.m., but the sirens were designed to be heard outdoors. People inside homes with air conditioners running did not hear them. Some residents had weather radios. Others relied on television or radio broadcasts, but the tornado struck during the lunch hour. Many people were not watching television. The cell phone alerts were still new. Only a fraction of phones received them. The warning was accurate, but the delivery was incomplete. What systems failed? The primary failure was not in the meteorology, but in the human and technological chain that connects a warning to a person in a mobile home. The wireless emergency alert system had been launched in 2008, but was not yet widely adopted. Most cell phones in 2011 did not have the capability to receive the alerts. The ones that did required the user to opt in. Many residents did not even know the feature existed. The weather radio network had gaps in coverage. The sirens were not designed for indoor notification. The broadcast media had the warning but could not reach every viewer. The result was a gap between the warning and the response. Some residents reported that they heard the warning but did not believe it. They looked outside and saw the rain, but they did not see a funnel cloud. The tornado was rain-wrapped. It was invisible until it was directly upon them. The investigation by the National Weather Service and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration produced a detailed report. The report noted that the tornado was part of a larger outbreak that stretched from Texas to New York. The April 25, 2011 super outbreak was the deadliest in the United States since 1974. In Georgia alone, 15 tornadoes touched down on April 27. The Ringgold tornado was the most intense. The report also noted the challenges of warning in complex terrain. The Appalachian foothills create radar beam blockage. The lowest scans do not reach the ground in some areas. The result is that the radar signature of a tornado can be difficult to see until it is very close. The spotter network was essential, but spotters cannot be everywhere. In Ringgold, the spotter who confirmed the tornado was a trained volunteer who saw the damage in his rearview mirror as he drove away. The aftermath raised questions that went beyond meteorology. The Federal Emergency Management Agency and the state of Georgia conducted joint assessments. They found that the community of Ringgold was not prepared for a violent tornado. The emergency management plan had not been updated to account for the increased frequency of high-end tornadoes in the southeast. The region had experienced a historic outbreak in 2008, but the lessons had not been fully applied. The city had no public storm shelters. The school had no safe room. The county had no funding for a comprehensive warning system. The disaster was not unexpected in a climatological sense, but it was unexpected in a community sense. The human consequences were profound. The survivors faced months of recovery. The Red Cross and other organizations provided assistance. The local churches organized cleanup crews. The National Guard helped with security and debris removal. The process of rebuilding took years. Many families chose not to rebuild. They moved away. The downtown area was rebuilt with new building codes that required stronger roof attachments and foundation ties. The county applied for FEMA grants to build community safe rooms. By 2015, 2 safe rooms were completed. The question was whether they would be used. In the years that followed, the memory of April 27, 2011 faded. New residents moved in. The tornado became a story, not a living risk. Why does the Ringgold tornado still matter? It matters because it is a case study in the gap between warning and action. The United States has invested billions of dollars in radar, satellites, and forecasting. The technology can predict a tornado with increasing accuracy. But the technology cannot make a person leave their home. The Ringgold tornado showed that the most advanced warning system in the world can fail if the public does not understand the threat, does not have a plan, or does not have a safe place to go. The solution is not only better warnings. It is better education, better building codes, and better infrastructure. The Ringgold tornado also matters because it was not an anomaly. It was a symptom of a larger pattern. The Southeast United States experiences a disproportionate number of tornado deaths. The reasons are complex: higher population density, more mobile homes, less basements, nighttime storms, and hilly terrain. The Ringgold tornado was an afternoon event, but it still killed 8 people who had a 12-minute warning. The question is what would happen if the warning was shorter or the storm came at night. In the years since 2011, the National Weather Service has implemented impact-based warnings. These warnings include specific language about the expected damage, such as catastrophic or life-threatening. The goal is to increase the urgency of the message. The wireless emergency alert system has been expanded. Almost all cell phones now receive the alerts. The system uses a geo-targeted broadcast that can reach millions of people in seconds, but the alerts are limited to 140 characters. They cannot convey the nuance of a tornado warning. The recipient must decide what to do based on a short text. The effectiveness of these alerts is still being studied. The Ringgold tornado is used as a baseline case in many of those studies. The answer to the question what happened is straightforward. A violent tornado struck a small town in Georgia. The warning was issued. The sirens sounded. 8 people died. The answer to why did they die is more complicated. They died because they were in structures that could not withstand the wind. They died because they did not have a safe room. They died because they did not hear the warning in time or because they heard it but did not act. The investigation did not find a single cause. It found a web of causes, each one contributing to the outcome. The meteorology was sound. The warning was timely. The response was compromised by human factors and infrastructure gaps. The Ringgold tornado also matters because it is a reminder that natural disasters are not purely natural. They are shaped by human decisions, where we build, how we build, what we warn, and how we respond. The tornado itself was a force of nature, but the 8 deaths were a result of choices that had been made years before the storm. The choice to allow mobile homes without tie-downs, the choice to not require basement-safe rooms, the choice to not fund a community storm shelter, the choice to rely on outdoor sirens in a region where many people stay indoors. The choice to not educate the public about the tornado threat in the southeast. These choices are not made with malice. They are made because of budget constraints, competing priorities, and a belief that the worst will not happen. In Ringgold, the worst did happen. The final legacy of the Ringgold tornado is the ongoing effort to close the gap between warning and action. The National Weather Service continues to refine its products. The local emergency management agencies continue to train spotters and educate the public. The building codes in Catoosa County have been strengthened. The community safe rooms have been built. But the gap remains. It remains because it is not a problem that can be solved by technology alone. It is a problem of human behavior, community resources, and risk perception. The Ringgold tornado is a case study that is still being written. Every time a tornado warning is issued in the Southeast, the lessons of April 27, 2011 are being applied. The hope is that the next time the gap will be smaller. The hope is that the next time the warning will not be enough. The hope is that the warning will be acted upon. The hope is that the community will be prepared. The hope is that the 8 who died in Ringgold did not die in vain. In the years that followed, that hope was tested. The National Weather Service and emergency managers across the Southeast studied the Ringgold event with a level of scrutiny reserved for the most significant disasters. They conducted surveys, interviews, and simulations. They wanted to understand why the warnings did not translate into action for those 8 individuals and what could be done to prevent similar losses in the future. The first major finding was the vulnerability of manufactured housing. Of the 8 deaths in Ringgold, 6 occurred in mobile homes. The tornado was rated EF4 with winds estimated at 170 to 200 miles per hour. No mobile home built to the HUD code of 2011 could withstand that force. Even with tie-downs, the structure would disintegrate. The occupants were essentially exposed to the full wind field. The message from meteorologists was blunt: mobile homes are not safe in a tornado, even a weak one. Yet millions of Americans lived in them, many with no alternative. In Catoosa County, the percentage of mobile homes was above the national average. The warning to seek sturdy shelter was difficult to follow when sturdy shelter did not exist. The second finding concerned the effectiveness of outdoor warning sirens. The system in Ringgold was activated when the tornado warning was issued, but sirens are designed to alert people who are outdoors. Inside a home, even a mobile home, the sound might not penetrate if windows are closed, air conditioning is running, or the television is on. On April 27th, many residents reported they did not hear the sirens. Others heard them but were confused by the lack of a distinctive tone. The same sirens were used for other emergencies, such as wildfires or hazardous material spills, so the meaning was not immediately clear. The National Weather Service recommended that communities adopt a standardized siren protocol, but implementation varied widely. The third finding centered on the delay between warning and impact. The tornado warning was issued at 2:32 p.m. The tornado struck downtown Ringgold at 2:44 p.m. That gave residents 12 minutes. In that time, a person could drive to a sturdy building, seek a basement, or take cover in a closet. But many people spent those minutes looking outside, calling family members, or waiting for confirmation. The psychology of warning response is well documented. People often hear a warning but do not act until they see physical evidence. That evidence, in a rain-wrapped tornado, does not appear until the tornado is at the door. In Ringgold, several survivors reported that they decided to take cover only when they saw debris flying through the air. By then, it was too late to move to a safer location. The investigation also highlighted the role of radar limitations. The radar site in Hytop, Alabama was the closest, but it was located in rugged terrain. The beam was partially blocked by mountains to the south and east. The lowest scan level was about 7,000 feet above the ground over Ringgold. That meant the radar detected the tornado aloft, not at the surface. The velocity signature showed strong rotation, but the exact location of the touchdown was uncertain. The National Weather Service office in Peachtree City had to rely on spotter reports to confirm a tornado on the ground. The first spotter report came at 2:41 p.m., just 3 minutes before the tornado hit downtown. The warning had been issued 9 minutes earlier, but the lack of ground truth meant the warning could not be as precise as it would have been under better radar coverage. The broader context of the 2011 super outbreak added complexity. By the afternoon of April 27th, the National Weather Service had already issued dozens of tornado warnings across several states. The high volume stretched the resources of local offices. Meteorologists were working around the clock, analyzing data, issuing products, and communicating with emergency managers. The sheer number of warnings meant that some communities received multiple warnings in a single day. This created warning fatigue. In Ringgold, a tornado watch had been in effect since early morning. Several severe thunderstorm warnings had been issued. When the tornado warning finally came, some residents dismissed it as another false alarm. They had survived earlier storms that day without incident. The storm that killed them was the one they ignored. The human consequences of the tornado extended beyond the immediate casualties. The injured numbered over 100. Many suffered deep lacerations from flying debris, broken bones from being thrown, and psychological trauma that would last for years. The local hospital, Hutchison Medical Center, was overwhelmed. Patients were treated in hallways and parking lots. Ambulances from surrounding counties were called in to transport the most critical cases to trauma centers in Chattanooga and Atlanta. The hospital itself had been damaged by the tornado, losing windows and sustaining roof damage. The staff worked through the night, sometimes by flashlight, to save lives. The community response was immediate and massive. By nightfall on April 27th, volunteers from Ringgold and nearby towns had begun searching through debris. They used their hands, shovels, and chainsaws. They pulled survivors out of collapsed structures and carried the dead to temporary mortuary sites. The Red Cross set up shelter in a local church. The Salvation Army provided food and water. The National Guard arrived the next morning to secure the area and prevent looting. The recovery operation lasted for weeks. Every piece of debris was searched for victims. The last body was recovered on April 29, 2 days after the tornado. The economic impact was severe. The town of Ringgold lost its historic downtown. The post office, the city hall, the library, and dozens of businesses were reduced to rubble. The Catoosa County school system sustained millions of dollars in damage. The high school and the middle school were both destroyed. Students had to be relocated to other buildings for the remainder of the school year. The total property damage in Catoosa County was estimated at more than $200 million. Insurance claims filed after the outbreak exceeded $8 billion across the entire region. The long-term recovery required federal assistance. The Federal Emergency Management Agency declared a major disaster for several Georgia counties on May 3, 2011. Individuals and households could apply for grants and loans to cover uninsured losses. The Small Business Administration offered low-interest loans to homeowners, renters, and businesses. The state of Georgia allocated additional funds for debris removal and infrastructure repair. But the process was slow and bureaucratic. Some residents waited months for their claims to be processed. Others found that their insurance policies did not cover wind damage or that their deductibles were too high. The financial strain compounded the emotional trauma. The question of why no public safe rooms existed in Ringgold before the tornado became a central issue in post-disaster reviews. The city had considered building a community shelter after a tornado in 2008, but the project was delayed due to budget shortfalls and disagreements over location. The cost of a single safe room large enough to hold 400 people was estimated at $1 million. The city did not have the funds. FEMA grants were available, but they required a local match of 25%. The city council prioritized other projects. The tornado demonstrated that the cost of inaction was far higher. After the disaster, the city successfully applied for FEMA grants and built 2 safe rooms, one at the recreation center and one at the high school. The meteorology of the April 27th outbreak deserves further examination. The storm system that produced the tornadoes was exceptionally powerful. A strong upper-level jet stream, a deep surface low, and abundant moisture from the Gulf of Mexico created an environment ripe for supercells. The instability was off the charts. The convective available potential energy, or CAPE, was near 4,000 joules per kilogram. The wind shear was extreme, with clockwise turning of the wind direction from the surface to the upper atmosphere. These conditions are typical of violent tornado outbreaks. The Ringgold supercell formed in northwest Georgia in the late morning of April 27th. It produced several tornadoes before it reached Catoosa County. The final tornado, the one that hit Ringgold, was the strongest. It carved a path 23 miles long and up to 3/4 of a mile wide. The tornado itself exhibited characteristics of an EF4 on the enhanced Fujita scale. The damage indicators included trees debarked, cars thrown hundreds of feet, and well-built homes swept clean from their foundations. One residence in the path was a 2-story brick house with anchor bolts. It was completely destroyed. The debris was scattered for miles. A pickup truck was found wrapped around a utility pole. A section of the Ingalls grocery store roof was lifted and deposited a block away. The tornado's intensity reached its peak as it entered the downtown area. The buildings on Nashville Street were hit head-on. The structural damage was consistent with winds over 170 miles per hour. The aftermath raised a fundamental question. Could more have been done to save lives? The National Weather Service had issued a tornado warning. The sirens had sounded. The media had broadcast urgent updates. Yet 8 people died. The answer is not simple. Some lives might have been saved with better warning dissemination, such as a wireless emergency alert that went directly to cell phones in the affected area. In 2011, the wireless emergency alert system was still in its infancy. It was not widely used for tornado warnings. Today, over 90% of Americans receive tornado warnings through their phones. But in 2011, that tool was unavailable. Some lives might have been saved if the public had been better educated about tornado preparedness. Many adults could not recognize the signs of a rain-wrapped tornado. They waited for visual confirmation that never came. Others did not know the safest location in their home. They hid in rooms with exterior walls or bathrooms with windows. They were vulnerable. The broader lesson from Ringgold is that tornado safety is not just a matter of meteorology. It is a matter of social science, engineering, and public policy. The warning system is only one link in a chain. The next link is public understanding. People must know what a warning means, how to respond, and where to go. If that link is weak, the chain breaks. In Ringgold, the chain held for most residents, but it broke for 8. Their deaths are a reminder that the margin between survival and tragedy is thin. The tornado also exposed the limitations of the spotter network. The National Weather Service relies heavily on trained spotters to confirm tornadoes on the ground. In rural areas, spotters may be few and far between. In Ringgold, the first spotter to report the tornado was a volunteer who lived near the south edge of the county. He saw the debris cloud in the funnel, but by the time he called it in, the tornado was already on the ground and moving north. The warning was already out. What the spotter provided was confirmation, which helped subsequent warnings for communities downstream. But for Ringgold itself, the spotter's report came too late to change the outcome. The National Weather Service later implemented a policy of using radar signatures alone to issue warnings, even without spotter confirmation, when the circulation is strong and the environment is conducive. This policy was already in place during April 2011, but the challenge of beam blockage in mountain terrain meant the radar signature was not as clear as it would be in flat areas. The lesson was that radar improvements were needed. In the following years, the National Weather Service upgraded its radar network with dual polarization technology, which improves the detection of debris particles. Dual-pole radar can identify a debris ball, a signature that indicates a tornado is already on the ground and lifting debris. This technology would have given Peachtree City a more definitive signature for the Ringgold tornado, perhaps allowing for a more urgent warning. The tornado also highlighted the importance of building codes. In the Southeast, building codes vary widely. Some counties have no codes at all. Catoosa County had adopted the International Residential Code in 2008, but it was not enforced in all areas. Many homes in the path of the tornado were built before the code was adopted. They had no hurricane clips, no anchor bolts, and no reinforced gable ends. They were essentially wooden boxes sitting on concrete slabs. When the tornado hit, they disintegrated. The deaths in these homes were not just a reflection of wind speed, they were a reflection of construction quality. The solution is to require stronger building standards in tornado-prone regions. But that is a political and economic challenge. Builders argue that strong codes increase costs. Homeowners argue that they cannot afford stricter standards. The debate continues. In the aftermath of the 2011 super outbreak, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration launched a comprehensive review. The report, published in 2012, included recommendations for all aspects of the warning system. Among them were the need for more spotter training, better communication between meteorologists and emergency managers, and the integration of social science research into warning design. The report specifically cited the Ringgold tornado as an example of warning success and failure. Success in the sense that the forecast was accurate and the warning was timely. Failure in the sense that some people did not receive or act on the warning. The social science aspect became a focus. Researchers at the University of Oklahoma and the National Weather Service began studying how people in the Southeast respond to tornado warnings. They conducted surveys and interviews in communities that had been hit by tornadoes. They found that many people do not take cover because they do not believe the tornado will hit them. They underestimate the risk. They also found that people often seek additional information before taking action. They check the internet, call family members, or look out the window. This delay can be fatal. The researchers recommended that warnings include specific actionable language, such as "go to a basement" or "interior room now," rather than a "tornado warning is in effect for your area." The Ringgold tornado also influenced the design of public shelters. After the disaster, FEMA updated its guidance for community-safe rooms. The new guidelines emphasized the need for accessible locations, such as schools and community centers, and recommended that safe rooms be built to withstand winds of 250 miles per hour, which is the standard for an EF5 tornado. The safe rooms built in Ringgold after the tornado meet that standard. They can hold up to 400 people each. But a safe room is only useful if people can reach it in time. In a tornado warning with a lead time of 12 minutes, residents of outlying areas may not have time to drive to the safe room. The solution is to build multiple small safe rooms throughout the community, rather than one large shelter. That requires funding that many small towns do not have. The story of the Ringgold tornado is not only about the dead. It is also about the survivors. Among them was a woman named Lisa who lived in a mobile home park south of Ringgold. She heard the warning on her radio and decided to go to her neighbor's house, which was built of brick. She arrived just as the tornado struck. The brick house lost its roof and its walls collapsed. Lisa and her neighbor survived by huddling in a bathroom. They were buried under debris for hours before rescuers found them. Lisa later said that she had always thought a tornado would never hit her home. After April 27th, she moved to a house with a basement. Another survivor was a teacher at Ringgold Middle School. The school had no safe room. When the tornado warning was issued, teachers led students into the hallways and crouched down. The tornado destroyed the roof of the gymnasium. The hallways held. No one at the school was killed. The teacher later said that the school's emergency plan had been drilled repeatedly. The students knew what to do. The teacher credited that training with saving lives. The lesson is that preparedness matters, even in a building that was not designed to withstand an EF4. The broader legacy of the Ringgold tornado is a renewed commitment to tornado safety in the Southeast. The National Weather Service has increased its outreach to mobile home communities. It has partnered with local television stations to produce severe weather specials. It has emphasized the importance of having a NOAA weather radio, which sounds an alarm even when a person is asleep. The number of weather radios sold in Catoosa County increased sharply after the tornado, but weather radios are not a panacea. They must be programmed correctly and they must be heard. In Ringgold, some residents had weather radios that did not activate because the signal was weak or the battery was dead. The tornado also prompted changes in the media. Local television stations began using more urgent graphics and tones during tornado warnings. They stopped showing regular programming when a warning was in effect. They dedicated airtime to meteorologists who gave minute-by-minute updates. The goal was to keep viewers informed and compel them to act. The changes have been credited with reducing the number of tornado deaths in later outbreaks, such as the 2020 Easter outbreak in the Southeast. But the fundamental challenge remains. The United States experiences more tornadoes than any other country. The warning system is among the best in the world, yet people still die. The reasons are complex: population growth in tornado-prone areas, the proliferation of mobile homes, the lack of basements, and the difficulty of changing human behavior. The Ringgold tornado is a case study in that complexity. 8 people died. Their deaths are not forgotten. They are part of a larger effort to close the gap between the warning and the response. In the years since 2011, the National Weather Service has continued to refine its products. The Storm Prediction Center now issues probabilistic forecasts that show the likelihood of tornadoes days in advance. The local forecast offices use high-resolution models that can simulate the development of a tornado. The technology has advanced faster than the human factor. Meteorologists can now predict a tornado with a lead time of 20 minutes or more, but only if the public acts. The social science is the next frontier. Researchers are studying which words, which images, and which messages are most likely to trigger action. They are testing the effectiveness of scenarios like "take cover now" versus "this is a life-threatening situation." The goal is to make the warning impossible to ignore. The Ringgold tornado also serves as a reminder that disaster preparedness is a shared responsibility. It is not just the job of government. It is also the job of individuals, families, and businesses. Every home in a tornado-prone area should have a plan. Every family should know where to go. Every business should conduct drills. The cost of preparation is small compared to the cost of recovery. In Ringgold, the cost of not preparing was measured in lives. The community of Ringgold rebuilt. The downtown now has new buildings with stronger construction. The safe rooms are in place. The school system has a new emergency plan. The fire department has a new siren system that can be activated remotely. The county has a new emergency operations center. The memory of April 27, 2011 is preserved in a small museum that displays artifacts from the tornado. The story is told to every new resident. The hope is that the lessons will not be forgotten. But the next tornado will come. It is not a question of if but when. The Southeast is a fertile ground for tornadoes. The climate is changing. The frequency of violent tornadoes may be increasing. The population is growing. The exposure is increasing. The Ringgold tornado is a warning. It is a warning that no amount of technology can replace the need for individual action. It is a warning that the gap between the warning and the action is the most dangerous gap of all. The goal is to close that gap. The goal is to ensure that the next Ringgold does not happen again. The goal is to honor the 8 who died by making their sacrifice count. In the end, the Ringgold tornado is not just a story about nature. It is a story about human beings, their courage, their fear, their failures, and their resilience. It is a story about a small town that faced a monster and survived. It is a story that continues to inform the way we think about severe weather. It is a story that deserves to be told. And yet, the telling of that story is not complete without a deeper look at the specific failures that allowed 8 people to die. In the weeks after the tornado, the National Weather Service sent a team of meteorologists and engineers to Ringgold. Their mission was to reconstruct the tornado's path, document damage indicators, and assess the performance of the warning system. They walked every mile of the track. They measured the width of the debris field. They interviewed survivors. They collected photographs from cell phones and security cameras. What they found was a storm that should have been survivable but was not because of a series of small, cumulative failures. The first failure was in the detection itself. At 8:50 p.m., the radar at the National Weather Service office in Peachtree City showed a strong thunderstorm west of Chattanooga. The storm had a hook echo, a classic signature of a rotating updraft. The meteorologist on duty issued a tornado warning for Catoosa County at 8:55 p.m. That warning was valid until 9:30 p.m. It contained the phrase, "A tornado has been reported with this storm." But the report came from a trained spotter who saw a funnel cloud that had not yet touched down. By the time the tornado actually struck the ground, the warning had been in effect for 15 minutes. That seems adequate, but the problem was that the warning was not specific about the tornado's location. It said for central Catoosa County. The tornado was moving northeast at 60 miles per hour. The warning area included the entire county. Residents in the southern part of the county near the mobile home park believed the warning applied to someone else. The second failure was in the siren system. Catoosa County had a network of outdoor warning sirens. They were designed to warn people who were outside. They were not intended to be heard indoors, but many residents assumed the sirens would sound for a tornado. On April 27th, the sirens did sound, but only after the tornado had already crossed into Georgia. The county's emergency management director later explained that the sirens were activated at 9:10 p.m., roughly 10 minutes before the tornado hit downtown Ringgold. That meant that residents who heard the sirens and went outside to look were in the most dangerous position possible. They were exposed to the storm with no time to take cover. The siren system had no automatic trigger. It was activated manually by a dispatcher who had to confirm the warning and then push a button. That delay cost time. The third failure was in the dissemination of the warning. At 8:55 p.m., the warning was sent to the NOAA weather radio system. It was also broadcast on local television stations. But the television stations were airing their regular programming. In 2011, many stations did not interrupt programming for tornado warnings unless the tornado was confirmed on radar or by a spotter. Some stations used a crawl at the bottom of the screen. Others used a small graphic in the corner. The message was easy to miss. In Ringgold, several residents later said they were watching television and did not see the warning until it was too late. They assumed the weather was a typical spring storm. They had no idea a tornado was bearing down on them. The fourth failure was in the mobile home parks. The mobile home park where the 4 children died had no safe room. The park manager later said that residents had been told to go to a nearby church if a tornado warning was issued. But the church was a quarter-mile away. In a tornado warning with a lead time of 12 minutes, that was not enough. The church itself was damaged by the tornado. Even if the residents had run, they would have been caught in the open. The park had been built before modern building codes required tie-downs for mobile homes. Many of the homes were not anchored to the ground. They were simply set on blocks. When the tornado hit, they were lifted, rolled, and splintered. The fifth failure was in the communication between emergency services. The Catoosa County 911 Center received multiple calls during the tornado, but the dispatchers did not have real-time radar displays. They were relying on information from the National Weather Service, which was now behind the storm. When residents called to report damage, the dispatchers could not confirm whether the storm was still in the area. They advised callers to stay where they were. In some cases, that advice was correct. In others, it was not. One caller, a woman trapped in her car, was told to remain inside. The tornado had already passed. She was not in immediate danger. But another caller, a man whose mobile home had been destroyed, was told to stay put. He was in the open, exposed to flying debris from the next wave of storms. The official investigation concluded that the warning system had worked technically but had failed operationally. The warning was issued, the sirens sounded, the media broadcast the information. But the system assumed that the public would understand the urgency and act accordingly. That assumption was wrong. The National Weather Service's own social science research had shown that people needed multiple confirmations before they took action. They needed to see the warning on television, hear the siren, and then perhaps get a call from a neighbor. Only then would they move. In Ringgold, the confirmations did not come fast enough. The investigation also highlighted a systemic issue with the terminology used in warnings. In 2011, a tornado warning meant that a tornado was imminent or occurring. But many people confused a tornado warning with a tornado watch. A watch means conditions are favorable. A warning means action is required. The difference was not well understood. The National Weather Service later changed the language of its warnings. It began using phrases like, "This is a life-threatening situation," and "take cover immediately." It also added a new product called the Tornado Emergency, which was reserved for confirmed tornadoes moving through populated areas. The first tornado emergency in the southeast was used for the Ringgold tornado, but by then it was too late. Beyond the warning system, the Ringgold tornado exposed weaknesses in the built environment. The downtown buildings that collapsed were old, unreinforced masonry structures. They had been built 100 years earlier before any building codes existed. The tornado's winds, estimated at 170 miles per hour, were strong enough to destroy them. But many of the homes in the area were also built without proper connections between the roof and the walls, or between the walls and the foundation. The National Institute of Standards and Technology later studied the tornado and recommended that building codes in tornado-prone areas require continuous load paths, so that the roof, walls, and foundation act as a single unit. Those recommendations were adopted by some states, but not by all. The human cost of the Ringgold tornado was not evenly distributed. The 8 people who died were all in structures that were either mobile homes or old masonry buildings. None of them were in basements or safe rooms. The survivors who took cover in basements or interior rooms lived. That simple fact became the central lesson. The best protection against a tornado is a deep underground space. But basements are rare in the southeast because of the high water table. The alternative is a safe room, which is a reinforced concrete shelter that can be built inside a home or in a community. In the years after 2011, FEMA provided grants to build safe rooms in Catoosa County. Many were built in schools, fire stations, and public parks. But the cost of building a safe room in a private home is several $1,000s. Many families could not afford it. The result is that the people who are most vulnerable to tornadoes, those in mobile homes, are also the least able to afford protection. The Ringgold tornado also had a profound effect on the way meteorologists communicate risk. In the years since 2011, the Storm Prediction Center has begun issuing particularly dangerous situation tornado watches when conditions are extreme. Local forecast offices have started using impact-based warnings, which include specific damage threats. For example, a warning might say this tornado will cause catastrophic damage to homes and businesses, or this tornado will be deadly. The language is designed to break through the skepticism that many people feel. Studies have shown that impact-based warnings increase the likelihood that people will take action, but the effectiveness depends on the wording. If the warning is too dramatic, people may become desensitized. If it is too mild, they may ignore it. The balance is delicate. Another change came in the media. After Ringgold, the Weather Channel and local affiliates began using more aggressive graphics, including red polygons and full-screen alerts. Some stations now have a policy of breaking into any program when a tornado warning is issued, even during the Super Bowl. The goal is to treat every warning as urgent, but even that is not enough. In 2020, a tornado outbreak in Tennessee killed 25 people, many of whom had warnings. The gap between the warning and the action remains the hardest problem to solve. Ringgold also taught emergency managers that the warning system must account for how people actually behave, not how they should behave. People check social media, they call family, they look outside, they hesitate. The National Weather Service has since partnered with social scientists to study this behavior. They have found that the most effective warnings are short, specific, and repeated. A warning that says go to the basement now is better than a warning that says a tornado warning is in effect for your county. The scientists have also found that people are more likely to act if they hear the warning from multiple sources. That is why the NOAA weather radio, the television, the phone, and the siren must all work together. In Ringgold, they did not. The story of how the Ringgold community rebuilt is not just about concrete and steel, it is about the slow, painful process of healing. The survivors had to deal with grief, trauma, and the destruction of their homes. Many suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. The tornado had taken everything, including their sense of safety. The sound of thunder now triggered panic. The sight of a dark cloud made them anxious. Mental health services were brought in, but the demand was overwhelming. The long-term effects of the tornado on mental health are still being studied. Preliminary research has shown that the prevalence of PTSD in tornado survivors is as high as 30%, and that the effects can last for years. In the years that followed, Catoosa County became a model for tornado preparedness. The new safe rooms, the upgraded siren system, the improved coordination with the National Weather Service, all of these were steps in the right direction. But the county also recognized that preparedness is not a one-time event. It must be maintained, the safe rooms must be inspected, the sirens must be tested, the drills must be conducted, and the memories must be kept alive. Every year on April 27th, the community holds a memorial service. The names of the 8 victims are read aloud. The story is told to a new generation of children. The hope is that they will grow up knowing that tornadoes are real, that warnings matter, and that action saves lives. But the broader society has a short memory. As the years pass, the urgency fades. New residents move in who did not experience the tornado. The safe rooms fall into disrepair. The siren tests become routine. The emergency plans gather dust. This is the natural cycle of disaster recovery. Ringgold is not immune to it. In 2022, an EF2 tornado struck nearby and the warning system worked perfectly. No one died, but the local emergency manager warned that the next big tornado might not be so forgiving. The complacency is creeping back. The Ringgold tornado remains a landmark event in the history of severe weather in the United States. It is taught in meteorology programs as an example of a high-end EF4 tornado in a region where such storms are rare. It is used in social science research as a case study of warning effectiveness and human behavior. It is cited in policy discussions about building codes and mobile home safety. The tornado changed the way we think about risk. It forced us to confront the uncomfortable truth that technology alone cannot save us. The human factor is the weakest link. And so the story of the Ringgold tornado is not only a story about nature. It is a story about human beings, their courage, their fear, their failures, and their resilience. It is a story about a small town that faced a monster and survived. It is a story that continues to inform the way we think about severe weather. It is a story that deserves to be told over and over until the lesson is learned. But the lesson is not easy. It requires that we acknowledge our own vulnerability. It requires that we plan, prepare, and practice. And it requires that we remember that the next tornado is coming. The only question is whether we will be ready.